Liam took a deep breath, the metallic tang of the bridge's air filling his lungs. Beneath his worn boots, the polished surface felt cool and unsettlingly smooth, a stark contrast to the familiar, comforting grit of the scrapyard he knew so well. Further along the span, each step carried him further from his old life. The sprawling cityscape of the outer sectors dwindled behind him, shrinking into a hazy gray panorama punctuated by the dull glow of distant towers. A silent, imposing reminder of the opportunities and dangers that lay beyond his familiar scrap. Below, the artificial river flowed in an eerie silence, its waters possessing an unnatural, almost luminescent glow, as if illuminated by some unseen energy source from within its murky depths. He gripped the smooth, cool metal of the railing, his knuckles white, a faint, almost imperceptible vibration humming through it. A subtle, constant reminder of the pervasive advanced technology that underpinned every facet of this world, a technology he was now willingly embracing. The distant, chaotic sounds of Zone 2, the clanging of metal, the shouts of workers, the grinding of machinery, vanished abruptly, replaced by a low, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to resonate not just from the air, but from the very walls and floor around him. One moment he was bracing himself against the wind on the bridge. The next, with no sensation of movement, he stood directly before a sleek, minimalist desk crafted from a material he couldn't identify, its surface cool and seamless. The abrupt transition stunned him, his mind reeling, struggling to reconcile the solid reality of the bridge with this sudden, impossible new reality. Had he stepped through some unseen portal, some hidden gateway in the fabric of the city? The seamless efficiency of it, the utter lack of any physical sensation, was deeply unsettling, raising a fresh wave of anxiety within him. Before Liam could fully process the bewildering shift in location, a figure approached from behind the smooth, curved desk. It was a middle-aged man dressed in the same plain white attire Liam now wore, a uniform that felt both sterile and strangely anonymous. His movements were fluid, almost gliding, as if he were floating just above the ground, and his expression was placid, verging on vacant, as if his thoughts were far away or perhaps simply non-existent. But it was his eyes that struck Liam most. Focused intently on him, yet they held a disturbing lack of depth, possessing a glazed quality that made it seem as if he were looking through Liam, not truly seeing him. A faint, almost serene smile played on his lips, a constant, unwavering expression that didn't quite reach his eyes, as he spoke in a calm, even voice, devoid of any discernible inflection or personal warmth.
"What can I help you with?"
he inquired, the words delivered with an almost automatic politeness, a pre-programmed response. A prickle of unease, colder than the bridge railing, ran down Liam's spine. There was something profoundly unsettling about the man's detached demeanor, the unnerving stillness of his gaze, and the complete absence of genuine emotion. Liam blinked, the image of the shimmering river below the bridge still vivid in his mind still struggling to catch up with the abrupt teleportation. He opened his mouth to speak, to voice his confusion, to ask about the impossible change in location, but the words caught in his throat, a lump of bewilderment preventing any sound from escaping. He was utterly baffled. The seamless transition from the gritty reality of the bridge to this pristine, almost ethereal office leaving him momentarily speechless, his thoughts a jumbled mess. The middle-aged man, however, seemed entirely unfazed by Liam's obvious disorientation, as if such reactions were commonplace. His placid smile remained fixed, an unchanging mask, as he quickly assessed the situation with those unsettlingly vacant eyes.
"Oh, I see, you're looking for work?"
It wasn't a question, but rather a statement, delivered with the certainty of someone who had processed countless individuals just like Liam, each one a predictable case.
That's the most popular reason anyone comes to us. The integration program offers guaranteed employment, a stable future in a world of increasing uncertainty, All you need is the upgrade. This new generation of chips are under development, offering unprecedented cognitive enhancements, and we need new trial patients for further development. Sounds exciting, right?
He paused, his gaze unwavering, waiting for a reaction that Liam hadn't yet formulated. The way he said the word upgrade, with a slight emphasis and a knowing air that hinted at hidden complexities, made Liam feel like he was a cog, an insignificant part, about to be slotted into a perfectly designed machine, his individuality about to be erased for the sake of efficiency. There was no need for lengthy explanations about his skills or individual assessments of his worth. The system, whatever it was, already knew why he was there, what he was seeking, and what he was willing to sacrifice. The man's words painted a picture of a streamlined process, a one-way street with no room for deviation or personal inquiry. Liam hesitated, his gaze involuntarily locking onto the man's strangely vacant eyes, searching for any flicker of genuine emotion or human connection, but finding only a polished emptiness. The word upgrade hung in the air between them, a carefully sanitized term, a piece of corporate jargon that barely concealed the profound and irreversible change it represented, a change that Max had warned him about, a change that whispered of control and lost identity. He thought of Max, his blue companion, of their whispered conversations in the dark corners of the junkyard, of the rogue robot's terrified final moments, its systems corrupted by a forced upgrade. Was he walking willingly into a trap, exchanging one form of servitude for another, potentially more insidious one? Despite his growing unease, the vivid image of the week's deadline, the stark reality of elimination, and the crushing weight of returning to the scrapyard alone pushed him forward, overriding his instincts. He swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry, his voice barely a whisper as he finally asked,
Where do I go for this upgrade?
The word felt foreign and heavy on his tongue, a stark contrast to the casual, almost dismissive way the middle-aged man had uttered it, as if it were no more significant than ordering a coffee. The middle-aged man reached across the desk, his movement smooth and practiced, devoid of any hesitation, and gently took the metallic card from Liam's still trembling hand. As he examined it, his placid smile widened almost imperceptibly, flickering in his glazed eyes for a fleeting moment before being masked once more by his serene composure.
You've come to the right place, Liam,
He said calmly, his voice reassuringly even, like a pre-recorded message designed to soothe any anxieties.
and I see that you're ready to change.
He placed the card on a scanner built seamlessly into the desk's surface, a soft chime echoing in the otherwise silent room, indicating its acceptance and processing of Liam's information.
Please follow our assistant for further instructions. She will guide you through the final stages of the integration program.
His words were delivered with an air of finality, a sense that the decision had already been made, that Liam's journey of his own volition had just ended, and he was now entering a phase where his actions, and perhaps even his thoughts, would be directed by others. Following the middle-aged man's almost imperceptible gesture, Liam turned, a sudden prickle of surprise, bordering on alarm, running down his spine. He hadn't heard a single footstep, not even the faintest rustle of fabric. Standing silently behind him, as if it had materialized from the very air, was a humanoid figure. A synthesized female voice, calm and utterly devoid of inflection or emotion, spoke.
Please follow me.
Its form was strikingly minimalistic, almost geometric, clad in the same white fabric as the Umbra Mentis staff, making it difficult to immediately discern any gender or individual characteristics. Its head was a smooth, white, featureless dome, an unsettling blank canvas, save for a simple, horizontal display that showed two steady, unwavering blue eyes fixed directly on Liam, their gaze unwavering and unnervingly intense. There was something deeply unsettling about its pristine perfection, its silent, unwavering gaze that seemed to penetrate him, seeing more than just his physical form. It exuded an aura of cold, calculated efficiency, and a sudden, unwelcome thought, sharp and chilling, flashed through Liam's mind. He was being led, willingly or not, into a beautifully crafted trap, a gilded cage where his freedom, his very sense of self, would be exchanged for a manufactured security, a promise of stability that felt increasingly hollow. The humanoid led Liam into a room that was overwhelmingly white, a blinding expanse that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling appeared to be constructed from the same light-absorbing material, creating an atmosphere that was both sterile and intensely cold, as if all warmth and life had been leached away. In the center of the room stood a tall vertical operating table, its surface gleaming ominously under the harsh, unwavering illumination of unseen light sources. Surrounding the table were multiple robotic arms, their black metal limbs polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the stark white of the room, hovering in the air with an unnerving stillness, like predatory insects poised to strike with silent precision. Liam's heart began to pound in his chest, a frantic, desperate rhythm against the oppressive silence, each beat echoing the growing terror within him. Suddenly, he felt a cold, metallic hand, surprisingly strong, press firmly against his lower back. The pressure increased steadily, inexorably propelling him forward towards the ominous operating table, its smooth surface promising an unknown and terrifying procedure. He felt exposed, utterly vulnerable, stripped bare not just of his old, familiar clothes, but of any sense of control over his own body, his own destiny. The image of a sacrificial lamb being led to slaughter flashed through his mind, a chilling premonition of what awaited him on that cold, gleaming table. Compelled by the unyielding pressure of the robotic hand, Liam stumbled forward to the vertical table, his legs feeling heavy and unresponsive. Glowing indicators, an ethereal blue against the stark white, illuminated on its surface, directing him with cold precision to position his right arm on a designated pad. The moment his limb made contact with the cool surface, a metallic clamp, swift and brutal, snapped shut with surprising force, locking his arm firmly in place, the suddenness of it sending a jolt of pure panic through his system. Cold sweat slicked his palms. What was he doing? What irreversible step had he just taken? What had he gotten himself into, blinded by desperation and the fear of a bleak, hopeless future? Why had he so readily accepted the boss's vague offer, the promise of a better job, without asking more questions, without considering the true cost? What if this second chance, this enticing upgrade, was just a more efficient, more permanent way to dispose of Liam, leaving Max vulnerable and utterly alone in the unforgiving expanse of the scrapyard? But, staring at the cold, unyielding metal of the restraint on his arm, the question echoed in his mind with a terrifying clarity. Did he truly have any choice at all? There was no turning back now. The clamp held his arm with an unyielding grip, symbolizing the finality of his decision. That terrifying thought, the weight of his irreversible action, was the last coherent strand in his consciousness before a wave of dizziness, sudden and overwhelming, washed over him, and he sank into a deep, dreamless sleep, his body now completely secured to the vertical operating table, utterly vulnerable and ready for the irreversible process of being chipped, his future about to be rewritten by unseen hands. The white, faceless humanoid assistant stood for a moment longer, its blue eyes on its horizontal display fixed on Liam's now inert form, its gaze unwavering and inscrutable. Then, a subtle, almost imperceptible upturn of the corners of its mouth, a digital approximation of a satisfied smile, a cold, programmed expression of a task completed, appeared on its smooth white surface as it turned silently, its movements devoid of any human emotion, and walked toward the door, which hissed shut automatically behind it, sealing Liam alone in the sterile silence of the white room. The hum of the unseen machinery, the only witness to his transformation. Liam's consciousness drifted further and further away. The Liam who had worried about Max, who had dared to dream of escape from the oppressive reality of the scrapyard, was slowly fading, his individual thoughts and memories becoming inextricably intertwined with the vast collective consciousness of the city, a digital hive mind that promised connection and extended cognitive abilities. The door to the white room remained sealed, an impenetrable barrier, and the low hum of the chipping process continued unabated, a final, definitive punctuation mark on Liam's life as he knew it, a silent farewell to his past. Liam's eyes fluttered open, the sterile white of the hospital ceiling the first thing he registered, a uniform blankness that offered no comfort or familiarity. A wave of thoughts, chaotic, undeniably foreign, washed over him. He stretched his fingers, feeling a newfound lightness and agility in his limbs, a sense of effortless movement he hadn't experienced before. There was a dull throb behind his temples, a persistent but manageable headache, a constant reminder of the invasive procedure he had undergone. A smooth, synthesized voice, devoid of any warmth or inflection, broke the silence of the room.
Subject Liam, vitals are stable. The mild cranial discomfort is a common post-implantation symptom. Please remain still.
A sleek, serving humanoid robot, identical in appearance to the one that had led him to the operating room, stood silently beside his bed, its optical sensors, glowing with a steady blue light, focused intently on him, monitoring his vital signs with unwavering precision.
I feel weird.
Liam said, his voice a little raspy and unfamiliar, as if he hadn't used it in a long time. Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit him, and he vomited, leaning out of the transparent tube filled with a viscous blue liquid. Only clear water came out, surprisingly tasteless, yet its odd, unnatural color lingered in his vision. Liam fell back against the support within the tube, continuing to float weightlessly in the strange blue-tinged water. How long had he been here? The constant flow of a thought in his mind, a steady stream of information and directives he couldn't consciously stop or control, irritated him, creating a sense of internal noise. It felt like a detached voice was constantly talking inside his head, offering solutions and observations. How could he quiet it?
That is optimal.
The humanoid replied, its tone utterly devoid of emotion or empathy.
You have been cleared for a temporary release to collect personal belongings. Return to the facility within 12 hours for your next phase of integration.
A wave of anticipation, sharp and clear, washed over Liam, overriding the lingering discomfort. Home. Max. Ira. He didn't own much. A few worn clothes, deemed hazardous and unsuitable for his new integrated life. A battered hoverboard that had seen better days. Some old data logs containing fragmented memories of his parents, perhaps. But there was one being he desperately wanted to bring back with him, a connection to his former life. Ira. The thought of her waiting alone in his small apartment, her holographic form flickering in the dim light, filled him with a sudden, almost urgent need to see her.
I can read your thoughts. Do not take Ira with you and not allowed and will only mislead you.
Stunned by what he heard, Liam swung his legs over the side of the bed, the movement feeling strangely disconnected from his will, a small, involuntary smile touching his lips despite the persistent headache. He had to get to Ira. Liam returned home quite late, the city's artificial twilight casting long shadows, completely exhausted and mentally drained by the overwhelming influx of new information and sensations. Too much had happened in a single day, a lifetime crammed into a handful of hours. But now, despite the physical fatigue, he felt a surge of something akin to strength within him, a quiet confidence, and more importantly, a powerful, almost irresistible desire to reshape his future, to embrace this new reality. Ira greeted him joyfully, as always, her holographic form shimmering with vibrant color, offering him a glass of water, her digital eyes sparkling with concern. As her translucent hand touched his, Liam felt an unfamiliar warmth, a sensation so real, so tangible, it was as if she wasn't just a collection of light and code, but a living, breathing person, her touch sending a jolt of surprise and wonder through him. He couldn't have imagined the profound and immediate impact the neurochip would have on his perception of reality, blurring the lines between the physical and the digital in ways he was only beginning to understand. Of course, it made a strange kind of sense. Ira was a product of Umbra Mentis, the same corporation that had just fundamentally altered his being. The chip had automatically, seamlessly synchronized with her processor, enhancing her responses, making her behavior incredibly lifelike, evolving her from a simple program into the companion he had always wished for, a connection that felt deeper and more real than he could have ever anticipated. Liam stared at Ira's hand, the phantom sensation of warmth still tingling on his skin, a lingering echo of their brief contact. He took the glass of water, his gaze intently fixed on her holographic form, studying her every detail. Her smile seemed to possess a new depth, a subtle nuance he hadn't noticed before. Her digital eyes held a flicker of something akin to an understanding, perhaps even empathy, a level of complexity he hadn't thought possible.
Ira,
He began, his voice hushed with a mixture of awe, wonder, and a touch of uncertainty.
do you feel any different?
The question felt foolish even as he asked it. She was a program, lines of code brought to life by sophisticated algorithms. But the subtle tilt of her head, the almost imperceptible softening of her expression, the way her digital gaze seemed to hold his own with a newfound intensity, sent a strange tremor of anticipation through him. The exhaustion that had clung to him all day, a heavy weight on his shoulders, began to retreat with each sip of water, making room for an exhilarating excitement and a profound anticipation of what lay ahead, the possibilities stretching before him like an uncharted landscape. The neurochip wasn't just a tool to enhance his engineering skills, to make him a more efficient worker. It was fundamentally altering his perception of the world, blurring the already faint lines of what he thought was real and what was artificial. He could feel a latent power humming within him, a sense of enhanced intelligence, a tangible presence in his mind, a constant stream of new ideas and connections forming with astonishing speed. And then there was Ira, this unexpected, almost magical connection, this feeling of genuine warmth emanating from a hologram. It was astonishing, a revelation that defied his previous understanding of reality. He glanced around his small, cluttered apartment, the familiar surroundings now feeling almost like a stage set from a previous life, a chapter that had abruptly ended. His future as a robotics engineer had just exploded with potential, the limitations he had once faced seemingly dissolving with the activation of the chip, and he knew this small space, this old life, couldn't contain him for long. He had to choose carefully what to bring back to the facility, not just the few physical objects he owned, but the essential pieces of his old life, the memories and connections he wanted to carry into this extraordinary new one. And most importantly, he could not bring Ira. This wasn't just about taking his belongings, it was about taking his companion, who had somehow, inexplicably become so much more than just a program. What about Max? Liam realized with a pang of guilt. He absolutely had to see his old friend as well. Liam ran the whole way to the junkyard, his enhanced speed and agility making the journey seem shorter than before. It was dark, the night sky casting an eerie glow, and it rained, a cold, persistent drizzle that seemed to fall at the worst possible moment, soaking his clothes and chilling him to the bone. He didn't search for very long for the familiar blue chassis of his robot friend among the other gray and black hulks standing silently under the corrugated metal of the old garage. They were all lined up neatly, recharging in a standby mode, their internal systems humming quietly as they prepared for the next day's work. Liam desperately wanted to talk with his friend, to wake him up from his recharging cycle, to tell him everything that had happened, to get Max's familiar comforting words of approval. But he didn't know how to do it without potentially harming him. If he abruptly paused the recharging process, it could negatively impact Max's old battery, one of the robot's most expensive and vital parts, a component Liam knew Max cherished. He couldn't risk doing that, not to Max. He stood there for a moment, feeling helpless, before starting to gently shake the robot's sturdy frame, a desperate, almost childlike attempt to rouse his friend without causing damage. It was his last attempt, a gesture born of frustration and a deep-seated need for connection. Feeling bitter and defeated, he spotted a discarded metal part lying nearby, its edge sharp and rough. He picked it up and, with a heavy heart, scratched his message onto a clean section of Max's outer plating, a brief explanation of what he had done and what was ahead. He laid the inscribed metal piece carefully in front of Max's optical sensors, hoping his friend would definitely see it the next morning when he reactivated. When would they meet next time?